Well, we might as well get into talking about the difference between the true shepherd and the false shepherd. And looking at John chapter 10, we recognize that John chapter 9 fades. Well, it doesn't even fade. It goes right into chapter 10. Just got through dealing with talking about the judgment that was on the Pharisees, who were not a good group of people to be associated with. And he had told them that for this reason, I have come for judgment in the world, those that can't see so that they can see, and those that can see so that they be made blind. And the Pharisees said, well, we're not blind also, are we? And the obvious answer is yes. And he goes right into talking. In John chapter 10, he's looking at these people, the Pharisees, looking right at them. And there's other people there too. There's the neighbors of the blind man himself, the apostles, many people around, because it's a feast going on, and everybody just got through seeing this miracle of the healing of the blind man and seeing this interaction between Jesus and the Pharisees. And so there's a lot of people here, and he goes right into it, and he says something like this. I may misquote it, but truly, truly, I say to you that he who does not enter by the door, or he who does not enter into the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up another way, this one is a thief and a robber. And he goes on to say, but, in contrast, but he who enters by the door, this one is the shepherd of the sheep. So you got those that enter by the door, and you got those that climb up another way, right? You got the shepherds, and then you got the thieves and the robbers. And then he goes on to say, and I imagine the Pharisees, they're listening to this, and they're so mad. Golly, they want to kill him so bad. But we read in the verse 6, I believe it is, that it's a figure of speech, and they did not understand that he was talking about them. Amazing, amazing. But anyway, verse 3, and I'm just going to talk about the 3 verses in this video, but he says, to the shepherd, the doorkeeper opens for him, and the sheep hear his voice, and that shepherd calls his own sheep by name, and then he can lead them out. So in that day, let's talk about what I've seen looking into this sheepfold business. I've never had sheep. I've had cows, but I've never had sheep. But in that day, they had what was called a sheepfold, and all the shepherds, there were many of them, in the villages, in the communities, the towns, whatever, they would all bring, at the end of the day, after their sheep had been grazing out in the pasture that the shepherd would lead them to, they would bring their sheep to the sheepfold. Everybody put their sheep in that one sheepfold, and it had a wall all the way around it, and it had a guy that was hired to watch that door while the shepherd would go and relax and rest while the sheep were protected in this wall, in the sheepfold. And very interesting, but the shepherd would come back in the morning, and it says the sheep would know his name, the shepherd would know his sheep's name, and they'd recognize his voice, and he would call them out by name. Well, you can understand that. I mean, you give your dog a name and he knows his name, right? Well, very, very similar. I mean, they might call their sheep by George, and there goes Lucy, and there goes, you know, Paco, there goes, you know, whatever. And it was a very intimate thing, because that shepherd would take his rod every day. When he would bring his sheep back into the sheepfold, he would check them out. In other words, he had put his rod down on top of them, and the sheep knew this experience, and so the sheep would allow the shepherd to investigate and make sure, you know, and diagnose any problems with the sheep, you know, if it needed, you know, if it had a injury of some sort, and the shepherd would treat that and take care of the sheep. And they were close. He knew them by name. And so he would make those sheep pass under his rod, each one of his sheep, as they went into the sheepfold. Very interesting, you know. I know when dealing with cows, I did the same thing, you know. I'll talk more about that later in another video, but the shepherd had a big job to do. And, you know, the life of the shepherd was a very difficult job. And you know, and the people of the day understood enough to know that God was characterized as a shepherd of his people, because, you know, they'd heard these verses from the Old Testament. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You know, he leads the flock of Joseph, talking about the Father, and so on and so forth. But this was a demanding job, and I'll go more into that job in just a minute. I'll have to make another video. But remember to take care of the widows, the orphans, and the poor. They're the ones who really need attention and help. And you can act somewhat like a shepherd in taking care of those people. They're the ones who need the help. They're the ones who need feeding. They're the ones who need pasture. Take care of them. Give your resources to them. And by the way, take everything I say as a grain of salt, because I could be wrong. Love you.